Just let me know when I'm going to count in on 3.
Everything's live already except for Facebook. We're almost there.
Okay. We're live. Just about.
Okay. All right. We're live.
Okay. So, back to our discussion about the Gevaros Hakadoshos. Basically, just trying to maintain this understanding of what does it mean, Gevaros Hakadoshos is this level of the unseen, the level of the unseeable, really, right? And nonetheless, in the future, we're going to be able to access it, and that's kind of the whole chiddush of what we're saying. The idea that we're going to go like Beis Shammai means that the potential, which is at this point unable to be revealed, will be in another level where we'll be able to actually reveal that level of reality in this world. If we try now, right, it creates damage on 2 accounts. One is it's basically gevoros, which are negative, like they're not in their source or they're sweetened. So they come out as actual gevoros, which is a problem in one of 2 ways. One is if you prohibit something, right, when you can still actually, you don't understand why, and in the realm of the revealed, there's no reason to do so, you leave parts of the world unelevated, right? And additionally, if you start acting in this Gevurdik way, you're starting to make judgments, and this creates anger and basically negativity, right? The more Gevuras, the more anger, the more judgment. This is sort of Nachum Meir, you mentioned this whole idea of the technology and this theory of Hadasha Asur Min Torah. I gave it a little more thought. This is like a problematic way of looking at things in sense of what we're saying now, because there's something which theoretically could be elevated, right? And you're sort of leaving it in an unelevated state. Again, being machmir and careful is one thing, but to say that it's asur is essentially removing the ability to elevate it and adding a tremendous amount of judgment for those people who are doing it because they feel that it's mutter. It creates a lot of negativity. So therefore we have like a Beis Shammai way of going about life. However, when there's no reason to worry about those judgments, because the negativity of the negative side of Gevura has been banished to the body of the snake, like we said in Gan Eden. It may still be evil, but it's not influencing or affecting the world. It's been removed from everybody. Now we can start to channel higher levels of Gevura, unseen states of reality, and actually bring them into this reality and elevate it. So we said on the last couple lines of page 192, according to this we can understand the inyan of the Are Miklat and the connection that are there for the accidental murderer, right? Makin Nefesh B'Yemos HaMashiach, and how that plays out in the future, because we know there's going to be 3 extra cities, right? What's the significance of that? So he says, Make Nefesh, the whole notion of murder, which we discussed, is the Shoresh L'Kol Inyanim Bilti Retzoim Shaleim Nitztavinu Below Taseh. Right? This notion of murder, we said, is really the root of all of the Yetzer Hara. Because we said that the whole world basically was the Ir Miklat for Adam HaRishon, right? What was the first sin? The Adam killed everybody, right? And he did it by accident. Right, because he didn't intend to essentially bring death into the world by that sin, and so therefore the tikkun for the first sin, and therefore the tikkun of all sin is the concept of the Ir Miklat. And we had stated before that's what Ir Miklat is, a city of refuge, and that's what we stated before, that it's kind of peculiar that of all the mitzvahs of the Torah, that the secret of Mashiach is contained inside of. In halacha, it's this kind of random, one of the 613 of the city of refuge. How did it get chosen? That the Rambam uses it as the proof that Mashiach is coming from the Torah, right? Because he says there are 2 things. On one, there's a prophecy in Parshas Bilam, which testifies that Mashiach is coming, and furthermore, it's inside of our ability to fulfill mitzvahs, that mitzvahs are not complete unless Mashiach comes. This is a kind of a level of proof and necessity for Mashiach, that we can't do all the mitzvahs of Hashem unless there's a Mashiach, and what's the proof? We have to have these 3 extra cities of refuge. And those are going to happen in the times of Mashiach, and if they don't happen, we can't fulfill God's word. And therefore, this is a proof that it will happen and there will be Mashiach. Nonetheless, of all the mitzvahs, why did God choose this one to be the proof that there's a Mashiach and the necessity that we have to have these 3 cities for Mashiach to come? And then we explained, because this mitzvah is a very klalistic mitzvah, which goes on all the rectification of all sin that ever happened. Because when Adam was banished from Gan Eden for the original sin, it was essentially that he was an accidental murderer, right? And furthermore, we said that every sin goes into this category of being an accidental murder. Why? Because whenever you sin, it's called shofech dam ha'adam ba'adam, spilling the blood of man by man. Every time you sin. Why? Because you have who are the 2 men? The godly soul and the animal soul. And the idea of the blood is like the energy of the godly soul. It's the Adam hu nefesh. When you draw the blood, i.e. the energy, out of the godly soul, and the animal soul takes that energy and runs off and does something that it's supposed to do, that it's not supposed to do, this is called murder. So any sin basically is deriving the blood life force of the godly soul and funneling it into the animal soul. It's called like murder. And every sin is accidental, because no Jew wants to sin or is even able to sin unless the ruach shtus and the spirit of folly overcomes him. So basically, the first sin was an accidental murder, and every sin is an accidental murder. And that is why this is such a klaus dika mitzvah, which Mashiach, the secret of Mashiach is contained inside of it. Now, that being said, what's the tikkun? Right? So first of all, this represents the root of all negative mitzvahs, right? Like the murdering accidentally is essentially like the poster child for don't do that, right? So all negative mitzvahs, which we're talking about Shammai and the idea of being machmir, going according to the negative mitzvahs, it really is sort of we're zeroing in on the big negative mitzvah, which is basically don't kill, right? And so, fine. And what we're saying is, hidden inside of this negative mitzvah, if you take it out of its lowly expression of actually killing someone, and we're going to try and go into the Gevoros Kadoshos of like the secret of the negative mitzvah, this primary, essential negative mitzvah, and see it in its true root. What is a negative mitzvah, for example, in its positive sense, where you're not worried about sin in actuality, because we've done away with all the evil in the world. Now we're trying to access the root of the origin of the negative mitzvah. You with me so far? So therefore, we understand the secret of it from the following. Yeshivasu shalmak nefesh be'ir miklat. That, so to speak, the tikkun of this murder, right? And the fulfillment of this negative mitzvah, basically go over here and sit in this miklat, that refers to, as we said before, limud Torah. Why? We said already. There's a little bit of review for those who weren't there. And it says that, why is the ir miklat a representative of a symbol of Torah? Who remembers? There's kind of a couple reasons we said. Yeah, Rafi?
You said the letters are like the stones and houses like that.
So a city, right, in general is called the Torah. Ir Elokeinu, because stones are like letters, houses are like words, and the entire Torah is like a big city. And what about miklat?
Yes, you take refuge in it and you're protected.
Yes, divrei Torah koltim. There's a verse that says the words of Torah are a refuge. So the whole sitting in an ir miklat, which is essentially this negative mitzvah, right, to not kill and go into this tikkun of this negative mitzvah, goes on learning Torah. And particularly when you now have this extra quality of the cities of refuge, which is the 3 extra cities, which we explained before what they represent. What do the 3 extra cities represent? Chabad, right? Because we said the 6 cities were the union of Shas, Shisha, Sidrei, Mishnah, one type of Torah, and the next level of this refuge, which is the Torah, goes on the Panimius of Torah, which is Chochma, Bina, and Das, where it says V'yisaftu lecha od shlosh arim. We're going to be adding these 3 extra cities, which really represents an aspect of Torah which is much deeper. Taimei v'sodos of Torah, the secrets of the Torah, the deeper reasons of the Torah. Nimshach u'mizgal legam hashoresh delo saseh, and therefore this Torah is essentially the tikkun for this negative mitzvah, which is accessing this level of Torah, draws down and reveals the source of the negative mitzvah, which is hasagas hashlila ba'ofen shel klita b'pnimius. It's like, in other words, together with the negative mitzvah and its rectification, which is Torah, the negative mitzvah is this high level of godliness, which is beyond revelation. But the notion that you can now have a klita on that, which means you can internalize and bring this level of the negative into a panemius and, so to speak, grasp it and reveal it. Now, what does that mean? Another way of putting this, even the highest things, those things which on their own cannot be expressed in a positive way, positive meaning that it has form and order to it, because it's something which defies our understanding. So this is the source of the negative mitzvahs. Even those things, when you bring in the concept of the 3 extra cities of the Ir Miklat, whose job it is to collect, right, and contain and bring into a panemius, those secret things are now understood and grasped and internalized. Be'ofen da hasagas hashlila, nimshachim izgalim bekocho shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu be'ofen da hasagas hachiyuv. So those secret things which cannot be known through these cities of refuge are basically brought into a way that they can be known. So the whole story here of the city of refuge is essentially trying to say that root of the negative mitzvah, which is presently beyond our grasp to paskin like that and to access this energy, the notion of the city of refuge on those levels means you are able to contain it. What is the meaning of learning Torah? You understand it. You grab it, you collect it and bring it in. But in this case, what are you being collect and bringing in? The source of the negative mitzvah, something which was beyond our capability of doing before Mashiach came. Before Mashiach came, those things had to remain secret, and if they tried to come in, they created a balagan. Once Mashiach comes, the source of the negative mitzvah can now be internalized, and higher levels of reality can be brought and funneled into our level of reality. You get this? So this is the secret of the cities of refuge. Why they represent the Mashiach, because it's the source of the negative mitzvah, having been internalized and brought down. And what is it called? The Chabad, right? The Torah, which is literally called Chabad, is the ability to access the inaccessible and put it into the mind of man.
That's why the Rebbe sent the Shluchim Tzfat.
By the Rebbe sent the Shluchim. It's the Ir Miklat here. Yeah, no joke. And the Chabad Yeshiva in the Ir Miklat. It's no joke. No joke.
It wasn't Tzfat.
Yeah, it was, right?
Yeah?
Really? It's amazing.
Okay, it's a little bit, you guys following what we just said? No? We're trying to say basically that just in short order, right, like in a line, the idea of the negative mitzvah of not killing, right, in its highest form is basically the ikar essential notion of negative mitzvahs, right? Because it's like, let's say we could take all negative mitzvahs into one. And what we're saying is we want to see the real essence of the negative mitzvah, not its sort of lowly expression in this world of pushing away evil. When are we going to see that? In the future, Mashiach comes when these 3 cities of refuge are added, right? So in other words, we're going to access the higher order of negative mitzvahs. And guess what mitzvah does that? The city of sitting in a Ir Miklat of the 3 extra ones, because that represents containing levels of wisdom which hitherto were not able to be contained. In other words, bringing the concept of the negative mitzvah in its source and actually having an ability to wield it in our lowly world. Right? It comes together with the source of the negative mitzvah, the murder. And then the idea of gaining an access to that negative mitzvah in its source and bringing it down is the idea of miklat, but not stama miklat, the miklat of the panemius of the Torah, because it's 3 extra cities for referring to the panemius.
The 3 extra cities are Chachmei and Das.
They represent the Kaini Kadmoni, right? There's actually 3 extra lands that we're going to conquer when Mashiach comes, right? The lands of Ammon, Moab, and Esav. And Avram was actually promised 10 lands. But the first thing we have to do is conquer the 7 lands that represent sort of Zman Hazeh, going like Hillel and dealing with 1 level of Torah. But once that will be completed, we will be given 3 extra cities, 3 extra lands. In those 3 extra lands, we're going to create 3 extra cities of refuge, which all this is said right into the Torah. It's V'safta lecha od shlosh arim. It says in the Torah. So this is like this messianic reality, and now we're explaining what it means with Panimius Ainyanim. That those 3 extra lands, which is essentially a higher order of Torah, which hitherto we had no access to, now we're going to have access to it in a way of Klita and Panimius. We're going to bring it down.
So we will literally have 3 more cities of refuge, but there's also Panemius aspect to it.
Yeah, like in other words, we're trying to say, like, what's the message behind it, right? Yeah.
So practically, is it like if that Torah which is being brought down is coming from that place of the essence of the negative
Yeah,
mitzvah,
yeah.
that Torah would through that understanding result in basically reconciling 2 opposites.
Yes.
Right, which
It's
is
like we were learning about this morning.
Which is basically
Very much.
Which is right, which is basically Chassidus. It takes 2 completely contradicting opinions
Right.
and makes them one.
Right.
Which is where we say that it's not understandable for this world, but makes sense.
The
for
real
the next world.
opposites, as we're going to continue in the morning mimer, is basically being and not being.
Right.
Right? Because we're saying that the reason why that has to stay in a state of like exalted separateness is because it's a state of nothingness.
Right.
It's a state of godliness which precedes existence. It's like the Or Ein Sof. And we're saying, and therefore you have to stay over there, because if you're going to come over here, you're going to obliterate the world, right? Or something's going to happen. It's not going to include us. And here we're saying, therefore we're going to stay with the nigla, that which can be revealed to us, and you have to banish that. In the future, we're going to be able to import that level of reality into there's no greater fusion of 2 opposition than that. And that's why Torah Chassidus is called Torah Shalom, right? It's the idea of basically showing how Shammai is right and Hillel is right. What do we call Chassidus? Dach. It's an acronym for Divrei Elokim Chaim. In other words, Elu ve'elu Divrei Elokim Chaim. We can take both opinions and simultaneously have them as one.
Right.
Yeah.
But everything is already made up of the
What's-
combination of opposites.
Say everything's already made up of the combination of opposites?
Yeah, like we already have like living things. Like you could just say like the polars of chesed and gevura, whatever, like creation and destruction, the being and not being, like everything.
But not at the
has-
same time, right? Usually, yes, we have creation and destruction. We have life and death. We don't usually see those 2 things residing at the same time. That is messianic, right? Like the dead will live.
Like in
Right. One of the explanations of the dead will live is that every second that we experience, we're like in a slice of life. What about 5 minutes ago? It's dead, right? You, 10 minutes ago, it's gone. So the whole idea of Tchias HaMesim is all those dead moments will live at the same time. It's going to be all of time and space happening at the same time.
So it's Ratzei V'Shov at the same time.
At the same time.
Well, that's crazy.
Is it basically that source of the negative mitzvah when it's brought down at the level of the other cities of refuge? That's when you get nigla. That's when you get like don't do from an emotional aspect.
Yeah.
But then when it's brought down, but not so low, just when it's brought down to the 3 levels of Chokhmah, Bina, and that, you still get the concept of not, but it comes through like an intellectual understanding of like basically what we're saying now.
Not following that, but let's go on. Can we agree to move on? I don't mean some not so low. I don't
As
know.
in the source of the negative mitzvah,
Yeah.
right? You bring it down. Sure. Yes, that's what we're saying.
I'm saying the source of the negative mitzvah is in the Chabad itself.
Right, it's in the Chabad. Okay.
Okay.
That's
That usually can't come into the world.
That usually can't come in the world, but we brought it into Chabad, right?
Okay.
Lower than Chabad is the 7 midots, right?
Yeah.
So when it's brought down into the 7 midots, do you get the Torah of Nigla? As in, don't do because you.
I'm saying when it comes out of the Chabad
Yeah.
and that stays hidden, and then all you get is a ray of that into the
Sure.
7 midos, that's nigla.
Sure. And,
Okay.
And then you still have the don't do, but for the reasons of Hillel rather than for
Exactly.
the reasons of Shammai, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, one more question.
What's the simple shot of why it's going to be an article?
Simple pshat. The simple pshat is that basically there's going to be there's not a great simple pshat, to be honest with you. Like why we're going to need extra cities of refuge. There's not going to be any more murderers. But what he said before is it's going to exclude the possibility of the evil coming out. But again, don't. This is actually a good point to bring up. There's many things in Chassidus which make you understand the nigla. In other words, the nigla doesn't really totally square away unless you have the panemius reason, right? And I can't bring them all off by memory, but usually when the Rebbe comes across one of them in his thousands of hours of teaching, he'll point it out. Because many people say, like, Chassidus is nice. It's like a little icing on your cake. You can have fun with it, but like it's not no geya to anything. But the truth is there's many times when without the panemius understanding, you can't make any sense whatsoever of the pshat. In other words, the pshat is the panemius. And this is kind of one of those areas. Why would you need 3 extra cities of refuge? It's only because it means something much more significant of like a higher order of knowledge, which is a state of miklat of the infinite, right? Because it's not a good reason that he brings here, and he pretty much went through this sugya pretty well. Why we're going to need it b'pashtus when there's not going to be murders? There'll be he says there'll be evil in the world, right? But it'll only be, but because of these 3 cities, it'll stay in potential. But why? The 6 cities couldn't keep it into potential? One reason that I saw in the Gemara is that there's, for example, one question they ask is, why do we need 3 cities on the Ava? Maybe this is a pshat type of answer. It's not great, but it's something. There's 3 cities in like Eretz Yisrael proper, and the other 3 cities are on the Ava Yarden. Who's, right? Like where Jordan is today. Who was there on the Ava Yarden? It was mostly land. It wasn't very populated. It was just Reuven, Gad, and half of Manasseh. Here on this side, they had all the other tribes. So why did they need 3 cities of refuge for that whole, just for those couple tribes, and we needed 3 for the whole Am? And right? So he explains basically like that there was a difference of how much murder was found, and therefore, depending on how many murderers there could be, you need more cities. So I guess in theory, having more cities diminishes the potentiality of negative. I don't know. It's not a great answer either. Okay, moving on along. I think the only answer is the Chassidus of it. If anyone comes with something more nigladik, let me know. Yesh Lomar. Furthering this beautiful point that we're getting to, remember we're trying to understand 3 things, how they come together. Why are we paskin like Shammai? What's the deal with the 3 cities of refuge? And the big one, which is the heter of the shchita of the shurabor. So he says, now we can say, she'inyin zeh mudgash gam b'maisa b'poel, right? That this concept of drawing down infinite lights that don't really belong here, that we're able to somehow collect them and have them, which is more or less a spiritual concept. He says there's one actual action, b'poel, in addition to just the limud Torah, because up until now we're just saying that basically we're going to access this source of the negative mitzvah just by a new state of knowledge. But how does that actually affect our actions? So he says, at least in one inyan al kol panim, there's at least one area where bringing down that negative space and activating in the place of the revealed world actually shows up as a changing of the halacha in a practical, active way. And what is that? The heter of the shchita shurabor, b'snapira v'alibiasan. This is why this mitzvah is the poster child for Torah Hadasha. Because if you remember, we said all the other mitzvahs, there's a leaning towards like an increase in lo saseh. Everything's going to go like Shammai. There's going to be like an abundance of no, you cannot do this. Because basically there's this new level of the no, which we can access. But how do we access? Basically through a consciousness, right? The level of a no is that you understand that which couldn't be understood before. But when it comes to the shchit of the shurabar, this is actually an action which represents this concept of bringing the unknowable into a state of knowing. How? Because first of all, this is the only one where instead of saying no, you're saying yes. This which was previously forbidden, this is the one thing, seemingly, which is now going to be permissible, that you can shecht in this way. How does that play in? Meaning, something which is this negative knowledge, which is in its natural state unable to be brought down into a concrete knowledge. And that's why in today's time you can't eat it, because it's inaccessible, so to speak, to be eaten, to be internalized, to be kolet. What is the idea of eating? It means you make it yours. It becomes your blood and flesh. You can basically like unify it into your organism, right? So right now you can't eat such a shchita, but in the future, suddenly they say you can eat it, which means something which was unedible, beyond your comprehension, will become literally edible. This is like an action item where you're going to take part actively in this reality of bringing down the unknown. And therefore, suddenly it's going to be mutter to eat this prohibited fish, animal. And that's the idea that this one is the literal poster child for the concept of Torah Hadasha Me'iti Teitzei. It's taking the forbidden, at least in this one area, and saying now it's not forbidden anymore. Now you can eat it. You can internalize that which previously was beyond internalization.
Wasn't the whole point that it wasn't forbidden? Like it always was included that this is
Right, but when Mashiach comes is when we can actually eat it. Right? Up until Torah Hadasha, they ask, Zohi Shchita Kashera? In other words, in the Torah that we have now before Mashiach's Torah, it is forbidden.
Okay,
It's only Mashiach's going to come at that time and be able to enable us to eat something which previously was beyond edibility.
But what's forbidden?
Not a word.
What's forbidden? Is forbidden this animal which is shechted exactly in this way? That's permitted.
Only when Mashiach comes, we're going to understand that it's permissible. In other words, that it's Torah Hadasha.
Okay, but aren't we understanding it now?
We are, because we're understanding Torah Hadasha. Right? But up until this point, the Midrash itself asks, this is not a kosher thing. You can't eat that. How are you going to sit around and eat that? So when there's a new Torah, i.e., when the unedible will become edible, then you can eat it. Literally, you're going to eat it. The other ones, you still have all the negative mitzvahs. You're not actually internalizing anything. You're just understanding the source of the negative mitzvah and bringing that reality into your perception. Here, you're literally making it part of your person in this one mitzvah. And this is how all these things come together. He's like finalizing this giant thesis. Okay, so just like we had to give a whole explanation why the cities of refuge, out of all the 613 mitzvahs, were chosen to represent this concept. We said because they represent internalizing the source of the negative mitzvah of murder. So too here we have to decide why this particular shchita of this particular two animals is the one that's going to actually physically become edible, and why is it get that schus, right? To be the one mitzvah that you're going to be able to eat, that which was prohibited. And he explains, it's so slow going in this thing. He explains in the Drusha of Chassidus, the chiluk bein leviyasan l'shor habar b'avoras ha'adam. I don't want to hold you guys up. I think we're going to have to. It's 1:59. You're saying I have a minute. Okay. He's saying that in the Drusha of Chassidus, it explains the difference of leviyasan and l'shor habar in avoda. We spoke about it a little bit. Right? You remember what the idea of Leviathan is places in the sea, which is called the Almadi Iskasia, which is the hidden world. And it refers to an avoda of ruchnias, of being yichudim, right? Miyached yichudim elyonim. We talked about the idea of swimming in the sea is dealing with higher and higher and higher of echelons of divine light, which all of them are sort of in the space of what we're calling before like the ayin or the no. Right? That's why the idea of the sea is that it's hidden underground. It's dealing in the echelons of sort of before the tzimtzum area, where it's all divine light. Whereas the shor habor, it represents the dry land, right? On the contrary, it's the revealed world. It's that part of our consciousness which humans can understand and which is what we call before hasagas hachiyuv, the positive knowledge, right? And it also refers to dealing with this actual physical world, not dealing with ruchnias, refining the chomer and the materialism of this physical world. And each one has something the other one doesn't have. I'm caught in like a time warp here. I think we have to stop because if I continue, we're going to take another 10 minutes, and